Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. Kevin Spacey was put on trial in Britain for allegedly assaulting a number of men. Naturally, he was acquitted. White media reports are that he shook hands with the jurors after the trial. That wouldn't surprise me if it was true. If people in the US are starstruck by celebrities, then the Brits were probably infatuated with having a real movie star in their presence. In a class-based society like theirs, money and fame will translate no matter where the person comes from. Now, as far as the evidence against Spacey goes and the details of the allegations, I suppose at this point it's all academic, not that it's very smart. He was acquitted. And that's the only thing that the white media is going to allow anyone to take away from this. Now, will he be allowed to come back to work in Hollywood like Mel Gibson, Louis C.K., and Alec Deadeye Baldwin? Well, he certainly would fit the Hollywood M.O. For black actors, when they have a scandal of any sort, they're standing on a trap door. But for white talent, it's a revolving door. Some say that Kevin Spacey is pretty much finished now, and while he's had trouble getting work up until this point, that's mostly because he's had so much pending litigation against him, which has only served to remind people that he was one of the first big-time actors to get caught up in the whole MeToo thing. Kinda hard for this whole thing to blow over when it hasn't blown over yet. But people remember that House of Cards dropped him, then that Ridley Scott movie All the Money in the World dropped him too, and they recast and reshot all of his scenes with Christopher Plummer. But what needs to be remembered about that is that at no time did House of Cards, Netflix, or the movie studios, or any of the stars or directors or people he was working with ever call him out by name. The white media said that he had been dropped from these shows and movies, but his co-stars on House of Cards and those movies, they never came out against him, never spoke against him. In fact, they didn't even mention him by name. And they didn't make a big deal out of the fact that he got dropped either. The white media reported on it, but the people who actually got rid of him, they didn't make much hay of it. They did just enough for them to pacify the heat that they were catching from some in the white media, and then after that, nothing. See, they were protecting their movies, their shows, or their streaming platform. They weren't attacking Kevin Spacey. How very different it is from when it's a black person being accused. See, with Bill Cosby and others, the white media was tripping over its own shoelaces to be the first to say that they denounced him or dropped him from their streaming platforms, to be able to say they were removing any and all content with him. They all wanted to be the first to say that they did it. Jonathan Majors is in limbo over at Marvel, and he's had all those movie roles that he was expecting dry up, all of those endorsement deals he had yanked. And no matter how his legal problems shake out, they're not planning some Jonathan Majors rehabilitation effort like they have been for Louis C.K. Though for Kevin Spacey, that's certainly in the cards. House of Cards, get it? Remember, he was given a Lifetime Achievement Award in Europe not so long ago. Half of Hollywood's profits come from overseas business, so don't be at all surprised if Kevin Spacey turns up in the not-too-distant future in some foreign films, and if those films just so happen to make it into the American Film Festival circuit, and ultimately they become contenders for awards like the Golden Globes or even the Oscars. They're going to be easing him back into the public eye by the side door. That's one way they could do it. When the person who's accused is not black, they may put them on ice for a while, but they almost always have some plan to bring them back. Roman Polanski admitted that he raped and sodomized a child, and Hollywood still treats him like royalty. Those actors and directors are not at all ashamed to be seen with him and bending over backwards to personally hand-deliver him his Oscar. Yeah, even if he did it, even if he admits he did it, well, he's the right skin color, so he certainly had a good reason for it, right? And hey, didn't you think Chinatown was a great movie? If you make a critically acclaimed flick, that should entitle you to at least 1 or 2 acts of child rape, right? By Hollywood standards, it does. This for a creep who at this point is more known for the crimes he's committed than for the movies he's made. So working Kevin Spacey back into the rotation is hardly some Herculean feat. Hollywood's done it all before. And for the sake of argument, what if the movie industry just decides to move on from Spacey? They just decide they're not in the Kevin Spacey business after all? Well, you're only as good as your last movie, and it's been a while since he's had one, but so what? Kevin Spacey's got money to burn. He's not going to be homeless anytime real soon, unless he's thrown away all his money on cheap booze and hookers. Kevin Spacey could very well go the way of Charlie Rose and some of those other old-timers, but that wouldn't change anything. Nobody's been on a crusade to erase him. Nobody's been on a crusade to make him the face of sexual assault in America. Nobody's trying to change any laws so that they can take a second bite at the apple to charge him again. All the men who have made accusations against him, a number of them well-known actors, and yet nobody's been doing a surviving Kevin Spacey series. The headlines and coverage are not slanted so as to make it seem like the jurors in Britain were starstruck by Kevin Spacey or that they were just stupid. The coverage is predictably accepting of the British jury's verdict. No judgment here. No white media attempts to smear Kevin Spacey after the fact either, or to demand that he apologize to his accusers, which is to say that he should admit to something that he was found not guilty of in court. Robin Roberts and Gail Schenck aren't going to be demanding any interviews with him where they regard him as guilty, and it's important that I bring this up because Kevin Spacey has far more accusations against him than that one phony accusation against Nate Parker back in the day, or the one highly dubious accusation against Jonathan Majors, or the one against Cuba Gooding Jr., who, by the way, was forced to take a plea in his case. Nobody in the white media is painting the picture that Kevin Spacey is some sleazeball who keeps beating the rap because he's a rich and famous white man who can afford the best lawyers money can buy. Kamau Dumbbell isn't making any documentaries about Kevin Spacey, and he's not lecturing anyone about how this is a powerful man with fame who can get away with whatever he wants. Nobody in the white media is bringing Kamau Dumbbell on the air and saying, well, we want you on our panel for CNN or for whatever network so we can talk about this. Besides, you did that mockumentary about Bill Cosby, and isn't this in the same wheelhouse? It's pretty much the subject of a rich and powerful man, so go ahead and speak on it, Kamau Bell. Not only are they not inviting him on to throw in his 2 cents about it, but he's not volunteering on it either. He ain't saying nothing. I don't see anyone trying to do any documentaries or docuseries about Kevin Spacey. They save that steady drumbeat for black men. So what becomes of Kevin Spacey now? Again, it doesn't even matter. They've established that black men go to prison while white men go to court. But I don't think anyone should be surprised if Kevin Spacey does some interview in the next 6 months. Again, with who, it's not important. Could be 60 Minutes, could be Andy Cohen or CNN, which is basically the same thing. He'll be given a sloppy kiss of an interview, no ambush, no dragging him back through the mud. And that will be considered the beginning of his comeback, or at least the white media slowly reacclimating audiences to get over the awkwardness of seeing Kevin Spacey on camera again. And I'm sure the number one thing that Spacey and whomever he is interviewed by will be talking about is that he's been accused many times, but they'll make sure to point out he's beaten the rap each time. He hasn't been convicted of anything. Why, some of his accusers, their stories seem to change. Kevin Spacey's the victim here. That's going to be his narrative, and it'll be theirs too. And because he's not black, the white media will go right along with it, because they always do. And then you can expect to see white media articles afterwards, which are nothing but puff pieces, telling us that Kevin Spacey's situation is far more complicated than we can understand, and well, there's no clear-cut answers here, and well, I guess we should just move on. Oh, it's just all so complex. In other words, we're bringing the guy back, don't buck the narrative, and we're done with this story, so you can complain all you want, we're done with it. Everyone just needs to accept that Kevin Spacey's back, and you just need to get over however dirty that makes you feel, same way people had to get over seeing Roman Polanski being given Oscars. Or Rob Lowe, who like R. Kelly also had a sex tape of himself having sex with a 16-year-old. Though unlike R. Kelly, Rob Lowe has steadily had TV shows and movies, and he hasn't gone to jail for anything, and nobody in the white media brings it up either. See, they don't make it where it's awkward to be hiring any of these white guys who have been accused of God knows what, or to give them work. They don't make it where it's awkward to do that. No Hannibal Buress, who I think was being paid to run around the country attacking Bill Cosby. If I was a betting man, I would say that this is pretty much how things will play out with Kevin Spacey. He'll get some interview with some white media outlet, followed up by some puff pieces basically saying we just need to move on, it's all so complex, and then we'll hear that he's been given some co-starring role in an independent flick, or perhaps some role in a streaming series, something to make it clear that it's all right to start hiring him again. And then he'll be the belle of the ball once more. And if anyone does try to bring up his legal past, any of the accusations against him, the white media will brush it off, or they will aggressively shout you down and claim it's not relevant, it isn't newsworthy, etc. Okay, I have a last-minute addition to this now afternoon's briefing due to what is some truly late-breaking news. Now, you just heard me tell you about my prediction that Kevin Spacey would do an interview with a white media outlet first, to break the ice on his comeback. And then after that, the white media would run a couple of puff pieces to mollify the public. And then we would hear that he got a role in an indie flick in Europe. Well, the white media skip right past those first two steps and just jump right to the part where they start giving him work again. Kevin Spacey was acquitted in Britain, and that's where his next movie is going to be coming out of. In fact, the movie's already been made, and the producers of it are bragging that they expect for it to debut by the end of this year. So that 6-month time frame that I gave is going to be a little bit off by about 2 months or so. And not only is the white media not trying to make Kevin Spacey into a pariah, the movie's producers are expecting to sell this film in foreign territories. Just remember, this movie is coming out of Britain, so when they say foreign, that means US. And while I'd love to say that the reason that I was able to predict this is because of extraordinary powers of foresight, the reality is we've seen this from the white media before, time and again. This actually isn't new at all. When the person who's had a scandal is white, it takes them months, not years, to bring them back. The white media is so predictable it's not even funny. They only have a few plays in their playbook. So, like Alec Deadeye Baldwin, who already had acting gigs lined up the day the charges against him were predictably dropped, so Kevin Spacey has had his theatrical release lined up before he was even acquitted. Before he even walked out of court, he already had his next flick ready to go. Hollywood is already going back to cheering him on as if nothing had happened. And why not? Hollywood just loves reboots, so long as the person starring in it is white. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: John Womack, Tajuddin Aleem, Andrew Lewis, Mark Brown, and Phil Tygo. Salute to them, and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.